Welcome to all of you Shiksha 360, and today basically we will discuss chapter number 28 part 2. Clear? Chapter number 28 part 2. Clear? So this is very important for the examination point of view, and basically if you are able to understand this chapter, so you only after that basically you can easily understand chapter number 29 and also chapter number 21. Clear? And also chapter number 21 of BFM. Clear? That chapter is also totally based on that. Clear? That chapter is also totally based on that. That is totally theoretical based chapter, but the content is similar. Clear? Total content is similar basically with respect to this chapter. Clear? With respect to this chapter. Clear? And some content of chapter number 29 basically we have to also undergo under this chapter. Clear? So that basically we are able to understand the concept. Clear? Our main motive is to understand the concept, and today basically we will discuss the concept of maturity ladder. As basically we have already discussed this concept, discuss this term maturity ladder. Clear? So now basically we have to understand that concept. Basically what is the meaning of that and what is time bucket. Clear? There is one word comes under the, you will find that. Clear? Time bucket. Clear? So here basically we will discuss basically what is time bucket also. So let's start our discussion. Wait a minute. So let's start our discussion on that. So first of all, tolerance level. Clear? First of all, basically what is tolerance level. Clear? So basically we can say that basically we are facing a risk. Clear? We are facing a risk. Clear? So basically up to how much level. Clear? Basically up to how much level basically we are able to tolerate. Clear? Basically up to how much level basically we are able to tolerate. So that is basically known as the tolerance level. Clear? That is basically to be known as the tolerance level. Like basically we can say that if our maturity assets, please understand carefully, if our maturity assets is rupees 200 crore and maturity liabilities 180 crore or 190 crore. Wait a minute. First of all, you will see this one. Clear? So basically our time bucket. Clear? This is to be, these are 10 buckets. Clear? These are 10 buckets. Next day, day one is basically known as to be next day or tomorrow. Please understand carefully. Day one or next day basically considered to be as a tomorrow. Day 2 to 7, day 8 to 14, day 15 to 18. Clear? So basically in this way, basically we have to manage our liquidity. Clear? In this way, basically we have to manage our liquidity. 29 to 3 months, 3 months to 6 months, 6 months to 1 year, 1 year to 3 year, 3 year to 5 year, and greater than 5 year. Clear? So these are the different time buckets. Clear? These are the different time buckets. And the tolerance level. Clear? Maximum tolerance level. Basically for the next day, maximum tolerance level is to be 5%. Clear? Basically for the next day, maximum tolerance level is to be 5%. And for the day 2 to day 7, the tolerance level is to be 10%. Day 8 to day 14, the tolerance level is to be 15%, and day 15 to day 28, the tolerance level is to be 20%. Clear? The tolerance level is to be 20%. Clear? Like basically we can say that if our maturity assets is rupees 200 crore and maturing liabilities is rupees 190 crore. So basically what is the difference between both of them? Clear? What is the gap? Clear? Basically what is the gap between both of them is rupees 10 crore. Is rupees 10 crore. Clear? So maximum tolerance level here is to be 5%. Clear? So maximum tolerance level here is to be 5%. Clear? So basically that is comes under that or not. Clear? So basically we have to able to understand all these things in this session. Clear? Basically we are able to understand all these things basically in this session. Clear? So let's start our discussion from the starting. So the example of setting tolerance level for a bank. Clear? Basically to manage the mismatch level. Clear? To manage the mismatch level so as to avoid wide liquidity risk. Clear? So as to avoid wide liquidity risk, the residual maturity profile. Clear? The residual maturity profile of assets and liabilities. Clear? The residual maturity profile of assets and liabilities will be such that the mismatch level for time bucket. Clear? Will be such that the mismatch level basically for the time bucket of 1 to 14 days and 15 to 88 days remains around 80% of cash outflows in each time bucket. Clear? Remains around 80% of cash outflows basically in each time bucket. Clear? In each time bucket That is basically it constitutes 80%. Clear? It constitutes basically 80% of the cash outflows. Clear? That is basically we are to paying. Clear? That is basically we have to pay that much. Clear? So the residual maturity profile of assets and liabilities basically will be such that the mismatch level for time bucket of 1 to 14 days and 15 to 88 days clear remains around 80% of the cash outflows in each time bucket. Clear? In each time bucket. So to manage liquidity, clear, to manage liquidity and remain solvent. Remain solvent basically we can say that basically we have adequate funds. Clear? By maintaining short term cumulative gap up to 1 year. Clear? Basically we can say that basically we have to maintain short term cumulative gap basically up to 1 year. Clear? That is short term liabilities and minus short term assets. Clear? At 15% of the total outflow of the funds. Clear? Basically how much? Basically at 15% of the total outflow of funds. Clear? At 15% of the total outflow of funds. Clear? Please wait 10 to 15 minutes. You are able to understand all these terms. Clear? What is the meaning of 15%? Clear? So bank should analyze. Clear? Basically here bank should analyze the likely impact of different stress scenarios on their liquidity position. Clear? Basically bank should have to analyze. Clear? Basically what are the different factors. Clear? Basically which impact their liquidity position and set their limits accordingly. Clear? And set their limits accordingly. And set their limits accordingly. So limits should be appropriate. Clear? Limits should be appropriate to the size, complexity and financial condition of the bank. Clear? Basically limits should be appropriate to the size, complexity and the financial condition of the bank. Management should define the specific procedures and approval necessary for exceptions to the policy and limits. Clear? So basically what are the specific procedures and things basically which we have to take care basically for maintaining that liquidity level. So for measuring and managing the liquidity risk. Clear? So measuring and managing the liquidity risk. So basically there are two approaches. Clear? So measuring and managing basically funding requirement can be done through two approaches. Clear? Basically can be done through two approaches. First one is the stock approach. Second one is the flow approach. Clear? Under the stock approach, basically we have to discuss some different ratios, which we have already covered under chapter number 14. Clear? But basically we will discuss once again here as a revision purpose. Second one is the flow approach. Clear? Second one is the flow approach. Under that, basically we have to discuss the time bucket, maturity ladder concept. Clear? Time bucket, maturity ladder concept. Clear? Under the flow approach. Clear? So let's start with the flow approach today presently. So let's discuss basically what they want to say here. So the flow approach. Clear? Flow approach basically to measuring and the managing liquidity. Clear? Flow approach basically to managing and the measuring liquidity. Clear? So the framework for assessing and managing. Clear? The framework basically for assessing and managing bank liquidity basically through the flow approach has three major dimensions. Clear? The framework basically for the assessing and managing bank liquidity. Clear? The framework basically for the assessing and managing bank liquidity basically through the flow approach. Clear? Basically through the flow approach has falling or has three major dimensions. Clear? Has three major dimensions. First one is measuring and managing net funding requirements. Clear? First one is basically measuring and managing net funding requirements. Second one is the managing market assess. Third one is the contingency planning. Clear? Third one is the contingency planning. Clear? So basically we have to discuss all these things one by one in detail. Clear? We have to discuss all the things one by one in detail. First one is basically measuring and managing net funding requirements. Clear? Measuring and managing basically net funding requirements. So measuring and managing net funding requirements. Clear? So that is basically comes under the flow approach. Clear? So basically flow approach, it is the basic approach. Clear? Flow approach basically it is the basic approach being followed by the Indian banks. Clear? You have to remember basically sometimes basically they are asking question basically which of the following is the basic approach. Clear? Basically followed by the Indian banks for managing the net funding requirements. Clear? Basically for measuring and managing the net funding requirement, that is basically known as the flow approach. Clear? That is basically known as the flow approach. Clear? It is a basic approach being followed by the Indian banks. Clear? Basically being followed by the Indian banks. So it is also called gap method. Clear? It is also called as gap method. Clear? That is gap between the maturing assets and maturing liabilities. Clear? It is also called the gap method of measuring and managing liquidity. It requires the preparation of structural liquidity gap report. Clear? It basically requires the preparation of structural liquidity gap report. So in this method, clear? In this method, net funding requirement. Clear? Basically in this method, net funding requirement is calculated on the basis of residual maturities of assets and liabilities. Clear? Basically in this method, clear, in this method, net funding requirement, clear, basically in this method, net funding requirement is calculated on the basis of residual maturities, clear, on the basis of residual maturities of assets and liabilities, clear, on the basis of residual maturities of assets and liabilities, clear. So these residual maturities, clear, these residual maturities basically will represent the net cash flows, clear, basically these residual maturities basically will represent the net cash flow, that is basically difference of outflow and inflow of cash, clear, basically difference of outflow and inflow of cash in the future time buckets, clear, in the future time buckets, clear. And these calculations, clear, basically these calculations basically we have to done basically on the history scenario, clear. These calculations are basically based on the past behavior pattern, clear, basically are based on the past behavior pattern of assets and liabilities as well as off balance sheet exposures, clear. So these calculations are basically based on the past behavior pattern, clear, on the past behavior pattern of assets and liabilities as well as of off balance sheet exposures, clear, as well as of off balance sheet exposures, clear. So cumulative gap is calculated at various time buckets, clear. Cumulative gap basically we can say that for day 1, that is tomorrow, 2 to 8, clear. In this way basically we have to calculate cumulative, clear. So what, how basically we have to calculate for overall for specific time bucket, let's discuss now, clear. So basically it shows that, clear, basically it shows that basically for a particular time, that is after a week, 7 days or fortnight, 14 days or 1 month or a quarter or a half year, clear, or year cash flows and inflows, clear, cash outflows and inflows difference basically will be represented by a gap, clear, basically will be represented by a gap, clear. So basically from that basically we are able to get the idea, clear, basically after how many specific period, clear, basically we are able to basically we have to manage, and after that basically we will face the liquidity risk, clear, and after that basically we will face the risk. So basically we have to manage according to that, clear. So basically we have to manage according to that. So in case the gap is negative, clear, in case the gap is negative, so it means that bank is facing the liquidity risk, clear. So the bank have to manage the shortfall through various sources according to the liquidity policy and the strategy of the bank, basically if the gap is a negative. So the analysis of the net funding requirement, clear. So the analysis of the net funding requirement basically involves the construction of a maturity ladder, clear, involves the construction of a maturity ladder and the calculation of a cumulative net excess or deficit of funds at selected maturity dates, clear, at selected maturity dates, clear. So a bank's net funding requirement, clear, and bank's net funding requirements basically are determined by analyzing its future cash flows, clear, by analyzing its future cash flows basically based on assumptions of the future behavior of assets, liabilities, and off balance sheet items, clear. So a bank's net funding requirement, clear, a bank's net funding requirement basically are determined by analyzing its future cash flows based on assumption, clear, basically based on assumption of the future behavior of of assets, liabilities, and off balance sheet items, and then calculating the cumulative net excess over the time frame for the liquidity assessment, clear, and then calculating the cumulative net excess over the time frame basically for the liquidity assessment, clear. So these aspects will be elaborated under the following heads. First one is the maturity ladder. First of all basically we have to discuss basically how to construct that flow. Second one is the alternative scenarios, basically how to manage. Third one is basically measuring liquidity over the chosen time frame, and assumptions basically used in determining cash flows, clear, assumptions basically used in determining cash flows, clear. Basically we will try to cover both these points in this session, clear. First one is the maturity ladder, and second one basically what is the alternative scenarios, clear, what are the alternative scenarios here. So the maturity ladder, clear, the maturity ladder, clear. So basically what is maturity ladder? Maturity ladder basically should be used to compare a bank's future cash flows to its future cash outflows, clear. To basically to compare a bank's future cash inflows, basically how much cash basically we are getting and how much cash basically goes out from our hands, clear, outflow, inflow, clear. So a maturity ladder basically should be used to compare a bank's future cash inflows to its future cash outflows over a series of specified time periods, clear, basically over a series of specified time periods. So cash inflows, clear, basically cash inflows basically from where basically we will get inflow of cash, or basically from where we will get cash, basically from the maturing assets. Clear? Like basically we are giving a loan and that loan is going to be matured. Clear? So basically we will get full payment. Clear? So cash inflows basically arise from maturing assets, saleable non-maturing assets, and established credit lines basically that can be trapped. Clear? And established credit lines basically that can be trapped. Clear? Basically from these basically we will get our cash. Clear? Basically from these basically we will get our cash. Clear? And basically cash outflows. Clear? Cash outflows basically from where? Cash outflows basically like basically we have to pay a fixed deposit maturity amount. Clear? That is cash outflow. Clear? Cash outflow basically includes liabilities basically falling due. Clear? On contingent liabilities. Clear? Contingent liabilities like LC, bank guarantee. Clear? Specially committed lines of credit that can be drawn down. Clear? Specially committed lines of credit basically that can be drawn down. Clear? So the maturity ladder. Clear? So the maturity ladder here is represented by placing sources and amounts of cash inflows on one side of the page and sources and income of outflows basically on the other side. Clear? So basically we have to construct in this way. That is inflow and that is outflow. Clear? So cash outflows basically includes liabilities basically falling due and contingent liabilities basically specially committed lines of credit basically that can be drawn down. Clear? That can be drawn down. Clear? So the maturity ladder. Clear? So the maturity ladder in the overall we can say that it is represented by placing sources and amount of cash flows basically on one side of the page and sources and amount of outflows basically on the other side. Clear? On the other side. So in constructing the maturity ladder, clear, in constructing the maturity ladder, a bank has to allocate each cash inflow or outflow to a given calendar date basically from a starting point basically using the next day. Clear? Using the next day, that is starting point, that is basically using the next day, that is day one. Clear? That is day one, or you can say that tomorrow. Mainly in the books you will find that day one. Clear? Next day basically that is day one. Clear? Or usually it is to be tomorrow. Clear? Or usually it is to be tomorrow. Clear? Day one it is basically usually it is to be tomorrow. Clear? This one is day one, it is to be usually tomorrow. Clear? And next one is second one. Second bucket is to be day 2 to 7. Third bucket is to day 8 to 14, and fourth one is day 8 to day 15 to 28. Clear? Basically up to 4 buckets. Clear? Basically tolerance level it is to be decided by the RBI. Clear? Tolerance level it is to be decided by the RBI, and above that, clear, and above that, clear, basically each bank have its own basically asset liability management committee or the board approval for the permissible tolerance. Clear? Basically now up to above that, clear, basically they have to decide of their own. Clear? Above that basically they have to decide of their own. Clear? But up to the first 4 buckets basically the level, tolerance level, it is to be decided by the RBI. Clear? The tolerance level it is to be decided by the RBI. Clear? So as a preliminary step or the first step basically to construct the maturity ladder, cash inflows basically can be ranked by the date. Clear? Basically on which date basically we will get, on which the assets mature, or on a conservative estimate, or when the lines of credits can be drawn down. Clear? Or when the lines of credit can be drawn down. Clear? Basically we will know that basically on 28th of February or 27th of April. Clear? Basically this asset is going to be mature. Clear? So basically we will expect that basically on that basically there is cash inflow. Clear? So similarly cash outflows basically can be ranked by the date on which liabilities fall due. Clear? Basically on which liability fall due, that is fixed maturity is going to be matured. Fixed deposit is going to be matured on 7th of March. Clear? So basically we will expect that on 7th or basically after 7th, the person will come to the bank and for their cash withdrawal. Clear? Basically for their cash withdrawal or the cash outflow. Clear? Similarly, cash outflow basically can be ranked by the date on which the liabilities falls due. Clear? The earliest date a liability holder could exercise an early repayment option. Clear? And early repayment option, or the earliest date contingencies can be called. Clear? Contingencies be called. Clear? And along with that, clear, basically significant interest and other cash flows basically should also be included. Clear? Like on that fixed mature deposit is going to be matured. Clear? So along with the principal basically we have to pay interest. Clear? So the difference between the cash inflows and cash outflows in each period, difference between the cash inflow and cash outflows basically in each period, the excess or deficit of funds. Clear? Sometimes it is to be excess if there is cash inflow. Cash inflow is more than the cash outflow. So basically we can say that basically we have excess of funds. That is basically we can say that maturing assets is more than the maturing liabilities. On the other hand, if there is cash inflow is less than the cash outflow, it means that maturing asset is less than the maturing liability. So basically we can say that deficit of funds. Clear? So the difference between the cash inflow and cash outflows basically in each period, the excess or deficient of funds clear becomes a starting point. Clear? Basically it becomes a starting point. It becomes a starting point basically for a measure of a bank's future liquidity excess or shortfall. Clear? Basically becomes a measure basically of a bank's future liquidity excess or shortfall basically at a series of point in time. Clear? At a series of point in time. Clear? Basically the difference between the cash inflow and cash outflow basically in each period, the excess or deficient of funds clear becomes a starting point for a measure of bank's future liquidity excess or shortfall at a series of points in time. Clear? At a series of points in a time. Clear? So basically there are total 10 such time buckets. Clear? Basically we have already discussed. Basically there are total 10 such time buckets. Clear? Earlier it is to be 8. Now basically it was 10. Clear? So there are total 10 such time buckets to be constructed daily and to be submitted to RBI basically on a fortnightly basis. Clear? And to be submitted to RBI basically on a fortnightly basis on the first and third Wednesday of each month. Clear? There are total 10 such time buckets basically to be constructed daily and to be submitted to RBI. Clear? And they have to be submitted to RBI basically on fortnightly basis. Clear? On fortnightly basis basically on the first and third Wednesday of each month. Clear? On the first and third Wednesday of basically of each month. Clear? So these time buckets as to be drawn. Clear? As per the residual maturity of the assets or liabilities. Clear? So these time buckets. Clear? Basically how we can draw basically as per the residual maturity of the assets or liabilities. Clear? Or the assets as per the residual maturity of the assets and liabilities. So maturing assets basically means if the asset is maturing, basically we can say that there is inflow of funds. Clear? There is inflow of funds. And maturing liabilities basically means that outflow of funds. Clear? Please remember, maturing asset basically means the inflow of funds and maturing liabilities basically means the outflow of funds. And if the maturing asset is greater than the maturing liability, clear? So there is the gap is positive, that basically we have sufficient funds. And if the maturing asset is less than the maturing liability, clear? So there is negative gap. Basically we can say basically we have deficiency of the funds. Clear? So negative gap. Clear? So this negative gap, it is the root cause of the liquidity risk. Clear? So this negative gap. Clear? So basically this negative gap, basically it is the root cause of the liquidity risk. So please tell fast. It is clear to all of you regarding this, just this one. What is positive and what is negative? Clear? Basically what is positive and negative? Clear? So if basically we have more maturing assets than the liabilities, so our gap is to be positive, and if our maturing asset is less than the maturing liabilities, our gap is to be negative. Clear? And negative gap. Clear? Negative gap basically it is the root cause of the liquidity risk. Clear? This negative gap, it is the root cause of the liquidity risk. Clear? This negative gap basically it is the root cause of the liquidity risk. So here basically we have already discussed. Now let's discuss. So basically as per the RBI, clear? As per the RBI, basically what they will say that if there are 100 rupees is present in any account, clear? If there are 100 rupees is present in their account, in any saving account or current deposit, clear? So basically that 100 rupees is to be divided further into the volatile and core portion. Clear? Into the volatile and core portion. Clear? Into the volatile and core portion. Clear? So why basically I will discuss it, because sometimes basically they will ask question on that. Clear? So what is the meaning of volatile and core portion? Or basically we have to understand this one. Clear? Basically for furthering understanding the concept. Clear? For further understanding the concept. Clear? So saving bank and current deposit basically may be classified into the volatile and core proportions. Clear? Basically as per the past analysis. Clear? As per the past analysis, close under the saving bank there is 10% and 15% under the in the current account deposits are generally withdrawable on demand. Clear? So basically what they want to say here, this is the saving account, this is the current account. So as per the general criteria, basically what they will say that if there are 100 rupees here and if there are 100 rupees here, clear? So out of that basically in this only 10%, that is 10 rupees are volatile. Clear? That is 10 rupees are volatile, and here basically 15 rupees are volatile, clear. Generally 15 rupees are withdrawable, clear, and rest 85 rupees are present here basically for the long duration, clear, for the long duration. So basically that comes under the core proportion, clear, for the long duration. And here basically 90 rupees are basically present, clear, just for the saving purpose, clear, and here 85 rupees, clear. So that are considered to be under the core deposits, and they are considered to be under the volatile deposits, clear, under the volatile deposit, clear. So this portion, clear, this 10% and 50% portion, this portion basically may be treated as the volatile, clear. This portion may be treated as a volatile. So while volatile proportion, clear, basically while volatile portion can be placed in the first time bucket, clear, the while volatile portion can be placed in the first time bucket, that is 1 to 14 days, and the core portion basically may be placed over the 1 to 3 years bucket, clear. The core portion, clear, basically may be placed in over 1 to 3 years bucket, clear. You will get questions from that. Basically just the core portion basically may be placed in over 1 to 3 years bucket, and the volatile portion basically placed in the first time bucket, that is 1 to 14 days, clear, that is 1 to 14 days, clear. And under the saving bank, the volatile portion is to be 10%, and under the current deposit, the volatile portion is to be 15%, clear. The volatile portion is to be 15%, clear. So let's discuss here one example, clear. Let's discuss here one example. That is the cash inflows. Basically it is in crore, and cash outflows, clear. This is the maturity ladder concept, clear. So basically maturing assets, clear. So here the maturing asset is to basically of rupees 100 crore, clear. Maturing asset is to basically of 100 crore. And interest receivables, clear, interest receivable basically from the lending, that is rupees 200 crore. And also basically we are selling some assets. So basically from that, basically we are getting 500 crore, and drawdown on the commitment, basically we will get 100 crores. So overall basically how much basically we are getting maturing assets? 1800 crore, clear. Maturing asset, that is 1800 crore, clear. On the similar side, cash outflows, clear, cash outflows. Maturing assets is 1000 crore, here the maturing liabilities is 250 crore. Volatile portion of the saving bank deposits, clear. So basically here they have mentioning 10%, clear. So overall amount in the saving deposit is to be rupees 1000 crore, and out of that volatile, clear, because here basically we will discuss that is day one. So volatile it is to be 100 crore. Similarly, volatile portion of the current deposit is to be basically 150 crore, clear. Overall how much funds basically present in the current deposits or in the current account, that is 1500 crore. Interest payable, clear, basically interest payable, that is 300 crore, and the drawdown on lending, clear, and the drawdown on lending is to be 100 crore, clear, and the drawdown on the lending is to be 100 crore, clear. So total overall cash outflow is to be 900 crore, clear. Inflow here it is to be 1800 crore, and total cash outflow is to be 900 crore, clear. So basically if we are checking maturing asset minus maturing liabilities, 1800 crore minus 900 crore, clear. So it is to be 900 crore, and that is also with the positive sign, clear. That are also comes with the positive sign, clear. So basically there is not any liquidity risk. It is the favorable condition for the bank, clear. It is the favorable condition for the bank, clear. Now basically we will discuss another case, clear. Now basically we will discuss another case here, clear. That is second time bucket, clear. That is the second time bucket, basically day 2 to day 7, clear. Day 2 to day 7 here. So maturing asset, clear. Here the maturing asset is to be 1900, and maturing liabilities here is to be 2100, clear. Maturing asset here is to be 1900, and maturing liability is to be 2100, clear. So basically what is the gap? First of all, here the gap is to be negative, clear, and gap is to be 2100 minus 1900, clear. 2100 minus 1900, the gap is to be 200 crore, clear. The gap here is to be 200 crore, and that is also negative, clear. So tolerance level, clear. Tolerance level as per the RBI guidelines in this bucket, clear. In day 1 bucket it is to be 5%, and day 2 to 7 basically here second time bucket it is to be 10%, clear. It is to be 10%. So as per the RBI guidelines is basically 10% of the total outflow, clear. It is basically 10% of the total outflow, clear. So tolerance level, maximum tolerance, basically it is 10% of the total outflow. clear. Basically up to that basically we can tolerate, clear. Up to that basically we can tolerate, clear. So total outflow here basically that is maturing liabilities. So 10% of 2100, it is to be 210, clear. It is to be 210 crore, clear. And here the gap is to be 200 crore, clear. So 10% of 2100, that is 210 crore, clear. So again, although this is a negative gap, clear, basically, but the bank is RBI compliant, clear. Basically, but the bank is RBI compliant because this limit is basically under the tolerance level, clear. Basically, this limit is under the tolerance level, and basically they have to manage their sources so that basically they will come out of this liquidity risk, clear, of this liquidity risk, and they have to maintain positivity, clear, and they have to maintain positivity in that. Third one is basically day 8 to 14, clear. Third time bucket, clear. Basically these are the different examples to understand the concept, clear. Say here the maturing asset is basically 300 crore and maturing liabilities is 400 crore, clear. So this one is also negative. Negative is basically 1000 crore. So a allowable tolerance, clear. Allowable tolerance basically under that is to be 15% of the total outflow. So 15% of 4000, clear. So allowable tolerance level is basically 15% of 4000. That is 600 only, clear. That is 600 only, clear. But the bank is having a negative gap, clear. Basically, but the bank is having a negative gap of rupees 1000 crore, clear, of rupees 1000 crore. And as per the RBI tolerance limit, it is to be only 600 crore, clear. So that is more than that. So here it is not RBI compliant, clear. So here this bank is not RBI compliant, and the bank must explain to RBI, clear. And here the bank must explain to RBI basically what are the corrective steps, clear. What are the corrective steps that the bank has to be initiated for hedging these mismatches, clear. Basically how to control this liquidity risk, clear. How to control this risk, clear. So basically here it is not the RBI compliant, and bank must explain to RBI, clear. And here the bank must explain to RBI basically what are the corrective steps basically that the bank has initiated basically for hedging this mismatches, clear. Basically for hedging this mismatches, or how to control this risk, clear, or how to control this risk, clear. So basically in this way, this is the maturity ladder concept, clear, for managing the maturing assets and maturing liabilities, clear. Maturing liabilities. So basically, once the maturity ladder is constructed, clear, once the maturity ladder is constructed, so RBI has advised the banks to study the net funding requirements in the case adverse eventualities, taking into consideration of the three alternative scenarios, clear, of the three alternative scenarios, clear. So these maturity ladders are constructed basically based on the historical statistical data, clear, basis historical statistical data, clear. So basically what are the three alternative scenarios, clear. Basically how to control that, clear. So what are the three alternative scenarios here? Clear. So this involves basically evaluating basically whether a bank has sufficient liquidity, depends in large measure basically on the behavior of the cash flows, inflow and outflow under different conditions, clear, under different conditions, clear. So analyzing liquidity thus entails basically laying out what if scenarios, clear, what if scenarios. So basically there may be three scenarios, clear. Basically there may be three scenarios basically for a bank in connection with the management of liquidity, clear, which provides useful benchmark, clear. Basically which provides useful benchmark. First one is the general market condition, second one is the bank specific crisis, and third one is the general market crisis, clear. First one is the general market conditions. Second one is the bank specific crisis. Third one is the general market crisis, clear. Under the general market crisis, basically there is the most unfavorable condition, clear. There is the maximum change under the maturing assets and maturing liabilities, basically under the general market crisis, clear. Under the general market crisis and general market condition, it is a basically we can say that among all these three, basically this is the best scenario, clear. General market condition, under that there is not that much big gap basically between the maturing asset and the maturing liability, clear. Maturing asset and the maturing liability, clear. So in the next session, clear, basically we have to discuss this diagram. Along with that, basically we have to understand all these three scenarios, clear. General market conditions, bank specific crisis, and the general market crisis, clear. And the general market crisis, clear. All these things basically we have to discuss in the next session, clear. So thanks to all of you basically for joining this session, and basically we are able to understand basically in this session basically a basic discussion of the time buckets, clear, and basic discussion of the time buckets, and what is maturing asset and what is maturing liabilities and what is tolerance level, clear. These types of question basically you will get in the examination, clear. These types of question basically you will get in the examination, clear. So thanks to all of you for attending this session.